Right, now moving on to our next room, which is going to be, actually this is my favorite part, because this sunlight is giving such a good effect. It's looking so good in my opinion. And yeah, let's start working on this scene. But before that, let me just add a chair right here. Again, just save your project and let's move on to the next step, which is going to be to add a chair right here. Chairs and tables, chairs. I'm just going to be adding a simple chair to this. Something like that should be good. We are going to be changing the color of this, obviously. Again, here I would not recommend you to actually rotate this chair exactly 90 degrees and just have it perfectly centered in. That just looks very unrealistic. Just having a slight bit of a tilt to this just gives it that extra bit of realism. Anyway, so now let's move on to this bed. So let's start texturing this bed. Again, we're going to be using the automotive materials. However, I think you can find some cloth textures in here as well. So you can just search for cloth. And if you just go to surfaces, you can find these fabric textures. They're really good fabric textures. So actually I am going to use some of these as well. Alternatively, you can simply go here and go to surfaces and you can go into fabric. Now you have all sorts of options. Actually, I feel like you don't even need that automotive material library anymore, because there are such good textures available on simply on this Megascans library. I think that's gonna look good. That's good as well. We can probably add this blue one as well. All right, so I am just setting these to download, and I'll see when they're done. And then we can add our textures. All right, so the materials have now finished downloading, and I'm just going to import them real quick, and then we can start adding them in our scene. Yeah, I think that was the only one. Now, because I'm making this tutorial, I'm trying to keep everything very simple, and I'm trying to basically download as less materials as I can. However, obviously when you are working on your scene, I would recommend you to actually add as many materials as you can, if obviously you can afford the performance cost it comes with, because obviously the more materials you're going to add, the more RAM it's going to take, the more resources it's going to take. So obviously keep that in mind. However, the more materials you're going to add, it's going to add more variation in your renders, in your scenes. So obviously that's gonna make it look much better. So, yeah, so basically that would be my advice. Yes, you can see these materials are look really realistic. However, obviously if we get very close, they're not looking that good, because obviously we're limited by the quality of these materials. So you can obviously increase the quality. You can make it high quality. Obviously the file size is gonna go higher, so it's gonna take more time to download, and obviously it's gonna take more it's gonna require a stronger computer as well. So yeah. I really like this dark fabric. However, it's way too large, I think. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be... How about I apply this to this thing? So I'm just going to be increasing the tiling because it's way too large. How about 10 by 10? Still way too large. Okay, so maybe how about 20 by 20? I think that's fine. Let me add it to this one. Yep, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? Maybe I can like sort of, I think, apply a blue onto this. So again, the size of this is very large as well, so I'm going to make it 10 by 10. That looks cool. Yeah, so I think these materials are really realistic and they're really good, and that essentially is the magic of Unreal Engine. You don't really have to work that hard or like spend that much time trying to get things to look realistic. Especially with Unreal Engine 5, everything just seems to work out of the box, and yeah. I think that's good. Maybe make it like 3 or something like that, because we do want the detail to be visible from a far away distance, but obviously we don't want it to be very large either. Oops. Let me just, oops, my bad. Let me just apply this material to these, and the ones at the behind, but the ones at the back can probably be blue. Where to go? Blue cloth. We can make it blue. I'm gonna make those ones dark fabric. Oops, not this one, that one. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure if this blue color goes with these fabrics, because I personally think it should all be black and gray. Yeah, so one thing which I'm going to be doing is that, let me just first apply this dark fabric material to these as well. I want this to be black and gray, and I want it to have that sort of vibe. Um, but yeah, one thing which we are noticing right now is the fact that basically this part is very dark. And yeah, one thing which I'm going to be doing is that right now, if you look at a lot of these parts, you're going to see that it does have contrast and it looks amazing. However, the problem with this is that, for example, in the bathroom, it's way too dark, and even in the kitchen, the corners and edges are way too dark. We're going to be increasing the indirect lighting intensity. So what exactly is that? Basically, if I just go to my directional light, you're going to see that right now, if I go up, you're going to see this indirect lighting intensity. If I decrease that, you're going to see nothing is going to happen. But if I increase that, now you're going to notice that actually I think 1 and 6 don't really make that much of a difference. So if I make it 100, you're going to see that now the darker areas are a lot brighter. And if I just make it, let's say 6 again, you're going to see that it becomes a lot darker. So if I just make it 100 again, you're going to see that these areas become a lot brighter. Yeah, so something like, I think 50 should be a good sweet spot, so that the dark areas are not that dark. So this part is, at least it's visible, right? So however, we are going to be obviously adding our own lights as well, so don't worry about that. But one problem with this is that one problem which you will notice is that when you increase the indirect lighting intensity, there's going to be more noise in your scene. So for example, this area, you're going to see it has quite a lot of noise, and that really shows up in animation. So you have to be careful with that when you're using this sort of this option. You can probably go for that sort of a look. I think that looks pretty cool as well. Hopefully it doesn't affect the rest of our scene. Yeah, so the bedroom, we basically have a choice of either having this sort of a look, which is sort of a daytime look, or we can have a sunset kind of a look. I think I prefer that actually, because yeah, we have this daytime look right here. So I think we should go for something a little more stylized right here. Perfect. So yeah, there's that. And apart from that, I think yeah, maybe we should probably reduce the normal intensity of this, because it's very what do you call it? It's very rough. This part right here looks very uncomfortable to sit on, to be honest. How about 0.5? Yeah, now you're gonna see it looks a lot smoother and it looks a lot better. Yeah, so as I previously mentioned, this blue fabric does not look that great, or in my opinion. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm simply gonna open this material, and then I'm gonna be changing the albedo tint to something like basically something gray. But for that, one problem which you're going to be noticing right now is that you can obviously add one color to this, right? How exactly do we make it gray? So you can make it gray by simply canceling this and just going down to the albedo controls menu, just turn that on, and then you can just decrease the saturation. Yeah, so if I just set it to 0, you're going to see that it's going to become all gray. But that looks very boring as well. So what I'm going to do is that maybe we can make it like 0.2, something like that. And then we can probably make it darker, something like that. I think that looks pretty good. And we're gonna have to make this gray material darker too, because obviously we're having a lot of sunlight, and I don't want things to be overblown. I don't want things to be overexposed. So we can just open this material as well, and we can make this darker as well. Something like that should be good. Yeah, and so I think it looks, the overall vibe of the scene is pretty nice. Yeah. It does look a little dull though. We can probably work on this dark fabric. I think it was this one. We can make this darker too as well, if that's something we want. Yeah, I think that black vibe is really nice. Yeah, I'm digging that. Maybe we can make this 10 by 10. Let's just experiment around. Yeah, I think never mind, actually I'm just gonna make it 20 by 20, because otherwise it becomes very sort of harsh and rough, and that's not something we want. Save your project, and let's move on to the next part, which is going to be to add a material to this one. This what do you call this bookshelf. So I'm just going to go to wood, and I'm going to be adding a simple wood material to this. You can obviously download more wood materials from Megascans if you want, and I would actually recommend that. However, I think for this tutorial it should do the job. Actually, I think if I can, I'm just going to remove these feet, because obviously we don't need feet because it's not standing on the ground. It's up there in the sky on the wall. So I can now probably add some books in this as well, something like that. Maybe move it up, maybe even increase the size a little bit, Something like that should be good. And then we can rotate this like that maybe. I'm just gonna go to the front view. Actually, I think I'll have to go to the left view for this. Maybe the right view. Or maybe the back view. Yeah, I think it's the back view. And now I can properly place this like that. Let me just go to the right view. Now I can properly align this. Let me rotate it slightly. And yeah, I think that's gonna look pretty good. Let me just go back to my perspective mode, and yeah, it looks pretty good. All right, so that's obviously with just one book, and I'm just gonna be adding another one on this like that. And I'm just gonna go to the right view, and I'm gonna be aligning this as well. Yeah, so first what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna be rotating it like this, 180 degrees, and then I can just go to the right view again, and I can position it properly. Now, if you're making a proper project, obviously this is a tutorial, so I'm just trying to do this quickly. However, I would recommend you to actually spend time on this and spend effort on this if you want to make your renders look actually good. So I'm just gonna make these fall like that. I think something like that should be nice. However, yeah, they do look very repetitive. They look repeated a lot, and I would recommend you to actually use different sorts of books if you're going for that realistic vibe. However, my job here is just to show you how to do things, and I would recommend you to actually use your own creativity. Yeah, so you can add books, you can add other items here as well. You can just import models from outside of Unreal Engine, or you can just use Megascans. Yeah, so that's going to be that. And apart from that, I don't like this. Firstly, I don't like the white color of these chairs, so I'm just going to give them a leather texture. How about that? I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, that just adds a color to the whole scene, because obviously this whole bed is very black and gray, so we want to add some color. And then I'm going to be adding a simple wood texture to this, because previously the problem with this is that firstly it's way too saturated, it's very red, which is not something I want, and secondly it's very reflective as well. Now obviously you can edit this material as well. You can make it you can change the tint color of this, so you can probably make it less saturated, something like that. Or you can and another thing which you can do is you can simply reduce the roughness. Yeah, roughness amount, you can just you can increase that, and it's going to make it matte. So yeah, that is another option for you as well. However, I personally feel like this looks a lot better. Yeah, so and I'm just going to do that. Maybe even that. No, that's way too reflective. I think this does the job pretty well. And this metal, these metal feet again are looking really terrible, so I'm gonna get rid of those. Then for this, I can probably apply. All right, so the feet don't look good on this. So what I'm gonna do, maybe I can try a metal, something like that. Nope, that looks terrible. I can probably, yeah, one thing which I can do is I can probably add maybe a darker shade of wood to the floor. Again, one thing which I'm noticing right now is that the shadow is not that visible, right? So I'm just going to be moving this slightly up so that we get more shadow. You're going to see now it looks actually like it's on the ground. Okay, so we can probably change the tabletop. Okay, yeah, one thing which we can do is we can right click this material and we can create a new material instance. So I'm just going to name this wood underscore darker. Now this is going to be the same exact material, however, it's going to be darker. Because right now the problem is if I make this darker, so for example, if I just want to make the tabletop darker, and if I just increase, if say I increase the darkness of this, the feet are also going to be affected, and everything else which has the same exact material is also going to be affected, right? And that is not something which we want. So I'm just going to be changing this new material, which is only going to be applied to this tabletop. And now if I just change the tint, you're going to see we can only change the tint of the top. However, one thing which I'm going to be doing is that instead of applying the darker material to the tabletop, I'm going to apply it to the feet. So now I can just make the feet darker, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Perfect. Okay, so we can probably apply a darker material to these legs as well, which I think looks a lot better. The reflections are much better. And so again, just save your project and let's move on to the next step, which is going to be to add the material to this closet. All right, so for the closet, I'm simply going to make it wooden. Now you have a few options. You can either make it wooden, you can probably make it you can make it out of marble as well if you want. Again, I'm going to be using the Alt and middle mouse button trick to move the pivot point, move the anchor point of this. And I'm going to be moving it slightly up so that we are seeing more of the shadow. Yeah, one good tip for you guys is to place things slightly above the ground. That way you're going to get a little more shadow. So yeah, this one, the problem with this is that it's flush with the ground. That's why we're not seeing that big of a shadow. However, if I just bring the pivot point closer, and if I just move it slightly up, you're gonna see now we're seeing a lot more of that shadow. And I mean, if you go very close, it might look that it's floating in the ground, However, if for example if you what do you call it, let me undo that. Yeah, if you look at it from far away, then it's gonna look pretty realistic. Yeah, so there's that. And now let's start adding materials to this. So let me just try adding a simple wood material. I think that looks pretty good. How about a darker wood? I think the darker one looks better. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I think it looks pretty good. You can probably make things... let me just add a light material to this one. You can probably mix different shades of wood, or you can probably even add some marble in this. Where's marble? I could do that, however... Actually, I think it looks pretty good, yeah, doesn't it? How about this coffee marble? I think that looks really good. However, I'm just going to stick with wood for now. But I mean, you have the option of doing whatever you want. And I would actually recommend you to not copy my layout and just come up with your own ideas and exercise your own creative muscle. So yeah. And moving on to this lamp, I'm just going to add an... Oops, my bad. I'm going to add an aluminum texture to this. And to this stand as well, maybe. Nope, that's way too shiny. How about a brushed metal texture? I think that looks pretty good. How about that? Nope. I'm just going to go with brushed metal. And how about this as well? I think this looks pretty good. And inside the bulb, I'm just going to add an emissive texture. Now, the reason why I would like to add a texture right there is because, for example, if you're looking directly at this lamp, obviously it's going to look very bad without that texture. However, if we add a texture, then you're going to see that it looks pretty good. Okay, now one problem which you might be noticing is that if I just if I look at it from this perspective, you're going to see that we are actually seeing the light. However, if I just move out of the perspective of this, we're not actually seeing the light. So that is something which you will have to keep in mind. And if you want this light to actually affect the world, then we can obviously press G to get out of game mode. And let me just save my project. And you can obviously duplicate that one of those lights and you can bring it forward. And you can add it right here as well, if you want this to be on. Obviously, the intensity is way too high, so I'm going to be reducing it. Yeah, that's way too bright for now. Something like that should be good. You can obviously add a spotlight as well to this. However, I feel like it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So I'm going to be reducing the source radius so that it actually looks like it's coming out of this small light source. And then we are going to be decreasing. Obviously, we're going to be decreasing the intensity 0.05. I think that should be nice. Yeah, but this is still way too bright. So I'm going to be reducing it even more, 0.01. I think that's going to be fine, yeah. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so next up we can move on to this fan. So the fan, you can just give it a black plastic texture or something like that. Oh, this one has holes. We don't want that. Or you can even give it a black metal. Actually, I think that would be more accurate. You can give it a black metal texture, something like that. Not glossy, I think. I mean, glossy doesn't look bad either, so you can give it that. However, the reflections don't really look that good. So I would recommend you to just give it a black anodized texture, something like that. Okay, perfect. Let's move out and let's look at our scene. let's just get a general overview of how our scene is looking right now. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, the lamp's fine. Let me move inside. This whole scene looks pretty good. The only thing which I don't like is these pillows are way too bright, so I might actually add the blue texture to these as well. The blue which we obviously changed the color of. I think that should be fine. Yeah, that just looks a lot better. This whole bed has a very dark vibe to it, which I personally love. And yeah, let me just add a wooden texture to this as well. We can just add a wood texture to the legs of this. And then the top, we can probably make it out of marble if we want. As I mentioned earlier, I try to find ways of adding marble to everything that I make, but that's just me. I think that looks really nice. How about these drawers also being made out of marble? I think that looks fabulous. Again, we're gonna change the material of this chair as well because of two reasons. Firstly, the blue looks awful, and secondly, the reflections are not good. So I'm gonna add something a little more what do you call it? A little more matte. So I'm just gonna go and add a wood. And actually, let me just add the dark wood to this. How about to this as well? Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. And then I'm gonna go and add, I think, a leather texture to this. I think that looks really nice. You can probably add something darker as well if you want. Something like that might work. Nope, not that doesn't work at all. I think this beige texture, beige leather texture is really nice. And yeah, just save your project, and I think we are good to go with the bedroom. Obviously, I would recommend you to add more details if you want. You can obviously fill this wall and fill this wall up as well. It looks pretty empty. However, this is if I was to fill everything, this tutorial would be very repetitive and very boring. So I don't want that to happen. Anyways, so I think we are good to move on to the next part, which is going to be the bathroom. So for the bathroom, what I'm going to do is that let me just go ahead and duplicate one of these lights, because obviously there's no natural lighting inside of the bathroom. Instead of doing that, actually, let me just duplicate this light, and we're going to take this light as well along with it. And I'm just going to add that to the bathroom as well. Now you can add more lights to the bathroom if you want. However, for this tutorial, I'm just going to stick with one. I think that's giving a really nice dark lighting effect, which I personally like a lot. Okay, so this the light is hanging way too low, so we can probably, yeah, I'm just gonna move it up. That's an option which we have. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is that let me first get done with the lighting. So right now the lighting doesn't look bad. However, I want the radius to be slightly higher, and even the intensity I want it to be like 0.2, something like that, so that it's actually a lot brighter than it was before. Now obviously there's no wooden floor in the bathroom. I mean, there could be, however, I wouldn't want that in my bathroom. So I'm just gonna have a marble floor, obviously, because I love marble. So for that, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna be creating a new cube. Actually, I don't think we need to create a new cube. We can probably, yeah, never mind. Let me just create a new cube, because if we were to duplicate this whole thing, this whole floor, then we would have to scale that down, and scaling down comes with its own consequences. So I would just prefer adding a new cube, something like that. Just make sure that it's extruding out a little bit, but not too much. And then I'm going to go to the top view, and in the top view I can adjust the size of this to match, to sort of match this size of the bathroom. Try to make it so that it's not extruding into other rooms as well, because that would not be good. I think something like that should be good. Let me just go back to my perspective mode, and yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we can add marble tiles. Now I think I did import a material which was basically marble tiles. Let me just go to my Megascans library, and I think I did import one which was basically there were marble tiles. I don't think I imported that, so I'm just going to go back to Quixel content. Let me just go to surfaces, go down to, oops, just go down to, I think, tile. We can add like ceramic tiles or something like that. This one I think is pretty good. No, it's actually not suitable for the bathroom, I think. I want something made out of marble, to be honest. Let me just go up to the marble category and maybe we'll find some tiles over there. Yeah, so these ones. I think I used them in my previous project as well. Yeah, these tiles are really nice if I just apply them. You're going to see firstly, the problem which you're going to notice is that the size is way too high. And so I'm just going to be reducing the size of this. Maybe make it 5 by 5. That's way too small. 3 by 3 might be good. I think that's fine. Yeah, let's actually look for other materials as well, other marble tiles as well, because although I don't think it's bad, but I think it's not the best. Maybe something like that. That could look good. How about that? Never mind. I think I did download one before. Alright, so I think I did download these white ones as well before, these beige colored ones. So I'm just gonna try to import those as well, and let's see which looks better. And then we're just gonna apply that one. Okay, so although, yeah, I think I'm just gonna go with the other one, the one which I applied previously. Let me just go down to that. I think it was this one. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with this one. Maybe increase the size slightly. 2 should be good, I think. Right, yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so now let's move on to adding the textures to everything else. So this what do you call it? The toilet. I'm just gonna add a light colored marble to this because it should be ceramic. However, I'm not gonna add some ceramic to this. I'm just gonna add marble. Coffee marble, how about that? Never mind. I think that should do the trick. How about something like that? No, that's way too fancy. I think I'm gonna go with that, yeah, because it's pretty plain and it looks pretty good. Okay, so maybe we should add something else to the seat. I think that should be fine. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, now coming to this, I'm simply gonna add a metal texture to this. Actually, you know what? Let's just first get done with everything which is supposed to be metal, because there are quite a lot of things which need to have a metal texture. Maybe you can add a more shiny one. Oops. Something like that. I'm just gonna add a shiny texture to that one because I think that looks a lot better. Yeah, this one looks pretty good. But to all the other parts, I'm just gonna add a simple, not that shiny texture. Okay, now I think the next thing which is supposed to be metal is this one. I'm just gonna add. I think that was fine. And you can probably add a brushed metal to that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. It looks pretty realistic. And again, just save your project and we can move on to this part. Oops, my bad. Nope, I don't like that. Maybe, how about that? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I think that's better. All right, perfect. So make sure that this is actually flushed in the ground. Let me just move the pivot point closer. Oops, my bad. Anyway, so let me just move the pivot point closer. And let's flush it down a little bit. I think something like that should be good. Yeah, I think that was good. Anyway, so moving on to this trash can, I'm gonna add aluminum texture to this, or maybe something like that. I think that should look good. Okay, moving on to this, I am gonna be adding. Let me add a metal texture to that. Maybe something a little more shiny. I think that should be fine. All right, now this whole thing is gonna be made out of, you guessed it, marble. So I'm just gonna go to marble and let me just find a good one. I don't necessarily like that. Yeah, so right now we're facing this problem because this texture is stretched, and that is because it's not properly UV unwrapped. However, yeah, we can fix this in Blender by simply going back and doing the basically just going into edit mode, selecting everything by pressing A, and then just go to U, press U to go to the UV unwrapping menu, and then you can just simply press Smart UV Project. But then you would obviously have to import it again, and I don't want to do that right now. So I'm not going to do that. However, if you're doing this professionally, if you're doing a professional project, then obviously I would highly recommend you to actually go back and fix that issue. Nope. I think the one which I tried previously, this coffee marble thing, I think that was fine. Let me just add that here as well. So the texture is stretching a little bit. So what we can do is we can probably reduce the size of this texture. We can increase the tiling to, let's say, 3 by 3. And I think that looks a lot better. Yeah, I think that's much better. And let me just apply a metal texture to this. But actually, let's just come back to that. Let me first get done with all the ceramic things first. Alright, so I think that was basically it. Now let's move on to, let's add metal textures to that, and to this as well, and to that as well. And I think to this as well. Alright, so that is the metal stuff done. And next up, let me just add, yeah, let's just work on these cloths. Let me just add some cloth textures to these. Okay, so that's way too dark, isn't it? Let me just go to Megascans and let's see if some of those Megascans assets are good enough. I think it was this one, right? Yeah, that's way too dark. Dark fabric. Where was the other fabric? Furniture fabric. I think I'm just gonna make it black. Yeah, I sort of like that look, to be honest. Like, it's very mysterious. Anyways, this is a little repetitive. However, we just have to get done with this before we can move on. And you're gonna see it looks pretty realistic, doesn't it? These textures and everything, they're, especially the cloth ones, they're super realistic. And that is the magic of Unreal Engine. So this part is white for some reason. Let me just add this granite material to this. No, sorry, it was this coffee marble. Okay, perfect. So I think we are good to go with everything else. Yeah, so these bottles, I'm just gonna give these bottles a plastic texture, so you can just make it different colors if you want. Just wait for that material to load. While that happens, just save your project. Or you can probably just add a black material to these as well, if you want. Oh, these colors are way too bright. We can probably reduce the saturation of these colors. So you can use tint and just check this, and we can probably make it some other color. We can make it darker, and we can decrease the saturation too. Let me just remove that color map so that we can add our color, add the color of our choice. Something like that might be good. I think that looks really nice. And let me just add that same exact material to the label as well, so that this becomes the same color. Oops. And let me add a black material to these sticks. I'm not exactly sure what this thing is, but I hope we did not mess up. I think we're good. Anyways, so let me just add, let's actually add the same material to this. And let's make that black. Actually, let me just make this whole thing black, because that looks pretty cool. And let's find a glossy plastic and let's apply it like that. I think that looks pretty good. And moving on to this, let me add a white material to this. Let's not make it fully white. Let's make the cap black. And same with this. Let's make this body white and the cap to be black. And let me just apply the same exact material to this label as well. You can obviously create these labels separately in Blender or in Photoshop or in any other software. However, it's time consuming, and I mean, you can do it if you want. But for this tutorial, I'm not going to do that because it's not that necessary either. I just add a black material to this. Now, obviously, these small things are not going to be that visible, so I would recommend you to not waste your time that much if you can. But if you're obviously making a professional project, if you're going to get paid for it or something like that, then obviously I would recommend you to just focus as much as you can on the details. Now, the problem with the mirror, the mirror is that obviously we can't exactly have a perfect mirror in Unreal Engine 5. At least I'm not sure how to do that. However, you can just go to metal. Actually, I'm just going to go to the exterior metal menu, metal right here, and we have this option of MI mirror, and you're going to see this mirror right here. It is going to be reflective. However, it's not going to be perfect, obviously. You can try to enable ray tracing options. However, it doesn't really do anything much. You can even try to make it darker if you want. Something like that. But it's just a mirror just is something that I mean, it doesn't really work that well in Unreal Engine 5. So I think we should be good to go with that. But apart from that, I think this interior looks really nice. Let me just add this. Let me just add this material, this textile material to this. And I think it looks pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, perfect. Apart from that, I think we are good to go with this what do you call it? This bathroom. One thing which you can do is you can simply add a light. You can basically add sort of a rect light and place it right outside the window. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be I'm just going to be bringing this light closer firstly. Just bring it close to this window, and then I can rotate this like that, and maybe even rotate it like that as well. And then you can move it and just have it right there. Now the benefit of having this is going to be that you're just going to see in a second. If I just make the light source very small, if I just decrease the source width and source height to like 10, you're going to see this sort of this thing, which looks terrible right now, but just bear with me for a second. If I just go ahead and decrease the intensity, something like that, and if I just change the light color to a slight yellow, something like that should be good. Now what's going to happen is that basically we're getting that sort of that sunlight effect, that basically sunlight is coming from the outside and it's just affecting the bathroom. Now you can have this if you want, and you can light this whole scene with just that area light as well, and it's going to look like the sun's coming from the outside. But obviously it doesn't make sense because the problem is that we actually have this whole scene as this whole scene is sunlit, right? So if the sun is coming from here as well, it doesn't really make that much of a sense. However, if you're just going to make a bathroom, just the bathroom, and you can have that effect and it's going to look pretty good. However, for now, I'm just going to skip that. And yeah, apart from that, I think we are good to go. Now, if you just take a look at everything, I think we've completed the whole scene, the whole apartment, and I think it came out pretty good. And as you can see, it looks absolutely fantastic. This part is a little dark, so what I'm going to do to fix that, we can simply just copy this light, and we can add this one right here as well. We can probably move it up. Yeah, so I think that looks really nice. We can do one thing. We can just move it slightly there. But obviously this comes down to personal preference. Now, one thing which I am going to do is that I'm going to be increasing the contrast even more, because I'm someone who loves very high contrast, and I love images which have a lot of contrast and they have a lot of sort of that dynamic range. That's why I feel like if you add more contrast, it's going to look a lot more realistic. But before that, I'm trying to add something a little less dark to this carpet, because otherwise it's going to look because right now it's basically looking very dark, and that's not something which I want. So we can probably find something for furniture fabric, maybe just add that. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. And we can even sort of create a material instance of this, and we can make name this carpet, and we can apply this, and then we can obviously go ahead and make tweaks to this. We can probably change the albedo tint, make it a little brighter, and even give it a color if you want. Something like that seems to be good. Perfect. So yeah, just save your project, and now we are going to be moving on. Let's move on to the next step, which is going to be to create the animation. But before that, let me just yeah, so I think that's the table's fine. I did not like it that much in the start, but I think it's fine. Yeah, I think that is a lot better. That's looking a lot better. Maybe let's try something else. I want something a little darker for the table. How about something like that? Not exactly. You know what? I'm gonna go with that because that looks dark, and it matches the whole vibe of the scene very well. And I think we're good to go. Yeah, we can probably remove the tint from this the walls. Right now they're a little bluish for some reason, so yeah, we can even make him even darker. How about that? Yeah, I'm just gonna make them darker because I think that looks better. And we can make it a little, we can bring them a little towards this orange side so that they don't look that blue. I think I'm gonna go with that. Perfect. But obviously all this comes down to personal preference, so I would recommend you to actually use your own layout, and I think it came out to be pretty good. This whole scene came out to be a lot better than what I expected. Now these parts are a little darker, so one thing which you can do is you can simply just duplicate these lights and you can place them right there, something like that. And you can probably reduce the intensity, but I think I'm going to go with that dark vibe. Let's try to increase the contrast a little bit more, and let's see how it looks. But first I want to show you guys how it looked like without the contrast increase. You're going to see that it looks absolutely washed out. It looks very bad. And now if I increase the contrast a little more, I think 1.4 was the sweet spot. Anything more than 1.4 looks weird. Yeah, so I think that looks really nice, and this is way too bright for my liking. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be going to wood. Let's just add this material to this. Let me just add the darker one to the legs. How about the darker one to this as well? Oh, I think that's fine. All right, so I think we are basically done with the whole scene, and let's move on to the next step, which is going to be to do the animation, to create the animation, and to basically showcase this whole scene.